So, comparison. Kind of a little bit of a dirty word, isn't it? Today on Reselling Rebels, on the Reselling Rebels podcast, episode 2, we are going to be discussing comparison, as I just mentioned. This is going to be a listen while you list audio only podcast. So that means that you can get some listing done on Amazon, eBay, Etsy, wherever you like. And hopefully, while you're listening to my somewhat smooth voice, you can get some work done. So, comparison is fairly negative. Comparison impacts a lot of people, many people watching this podcast as well as myself, in quite a negative way. And I've got quite a lot to discuss today on this, so it's probably going to be quite a long podcast. I've got various different points. I've also got a couple of comments from a couple of people who not messaged me, but went over on my community tab on YouTube and drop me a comment over there. And I also wanted to touch on social media and comparison as well within the reselling community. I am going to go through, as I go through this podcast, I will be talking more generally about comparison, but I will be relating it back to reselling wherever possible. So first off, before we get on with the podcast today, I wanted just to mention that next week's topic is balancing your business and social life. So essentially, if you have any comments, questions or queries for that podcast, please do drop them down below and I will read them out at the end of next week's podcast. Just as this week, I will be reading out the comments that I've received at the end of this podcast. So first off, I wanted to talk about the subjectivity of success and failure. So we're starting off from the standpoint of success and failure because, of course, when we compare with other people, we are doing so in granting them a level of higher success than we feel we have ourselves. So I'm actually on the Collins Dictionary website right now, so it's a fairly reputable website for definitions. And here is the definition of success. Success is the achievement of something that you have been trying to do. So I'll just read that again. Success is the achievement of something that you have been trying to do. Notice the emphasis that I put on the word you there. Most people would say that the definition of success is, well, having a big house, having a big car, having a beautiful wife or a beautiful husband or something like that. Maybe even having children or just generally having a lot of money, generally being in a position of power, maybe even something like that, being high up in your career, all that sort of stuff. That's what most people would associate success to be in the Western world, particularly, obviously in different countries. The more media, let's say, the media definition of success that the media kind of basically present in front of us as this is what your life should be like. That definition will fluctuate depending on what country you're in, I suppose. But here in the UK and possibly in America too, this media presentation of success is big house, big car, beautiful spouse, etc. That sort of stuff. You know, very materialistic. But that isn't the definition of success, as we've just accounted for there. The definition of success comes completely from yourself. It is something that you have been trying to achieve. Not anyone else, but just one thing that you have attained, that you've wanted to try and achieve, essentially. So, with that being said, success can be as small or as large as you make it. And I want to draw on a little example very quickly here. So, we could say that success and failure have hard and fast rules in certain realms, right? So, for example, in the realm of sports, you could say, well, you know, someone who comes first in a race is they've succeeded, and someone who comes fourth place, well, they've failed, right? And that's quite clear. We know that that's true. We know that that's success and that's failure, and that's how it is, you know. There's no grey area there, you know. That's not subjective, right? Well, I want you to look at it from a different angle, if you will. And this angle comes from the individual's point of view. So the person who's come first, to everyone else in that race, and to maybe even the bystanders, he has attained success. He has achieved everything he wanted to achieve. But inside his mind, he could be thinking, damn, I didn't get the time I wanted to get. Maybe it's a relay race or whatever it may be, I don't know. I didn't quite get to the finish fast enough. I've failed. So to everyone else, he's succeeded, but to himself, he's failed. Person who comes fourth in the race. To everyone else, they failed. The bystanders, the other people in the race, oh, you've pretty much failed. Maybe the people who have come 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, maybe to those people he's not failed, but to most people he's pretty much failed. But inside his mind, he's thinking, you know, I'm really happy with that. Maybe it's that he had an operation not too long ago, you know, 2, 3, 4 months ago, and he's just recovered in time for the race. And he was thinking, oh, well, I'll probably come last. And that's fine. I'm accepting of that because, you know, that's how it is. I've had an operation and I'm just happy to be participating. But he comes fourth. And inside his mind, it's the most brilliant thing. I'm so pleased with myself. I'm so chuffed. And if you're not English, chuffed just basically means happy with yourself. I know it's kind of a inherently English phrase, that one. So, and I know there's probably a few people from the US watching this. So anyway, so I'm so pleased, I'm so chuffed with myself. But everyone else thinking, oh, well, he's pretty much failed or he's not done the best he could have done. You know, maybe to those who know that he had an operation a few months ago, maybe they're not thinking that, but to those who are none the wiser, he's basically failed. So you see here, you see in that example that success and failure, they're completely subjective. And there's really no hard and fast definition between the two. It's simply whatever you make of it. Whatever you make of it. So now with that being said, now we know, let's say, just humour me a little bit from the examples I've given there. Let's say now we know success and failure are stupid, ridiculous, because really they're just subjective and we make of it whatever we want. So we know that now, and we think to ourselves, well, hang on a minute, I realise that now. Why do I compare myself to others? Why am I getting into this comparison with others? Whether it be on Instagram or Facebook when people share sales posts or how many they've listed in a day or whatever it may be in terms of reselling wise. Why do I compare myself to others? Because I know now that success and failure are almost just these abstractions, essentially, from the reality of the situation. And whatever I do, I make the success or failure of it that I determine, essentially. I determine that factor. But you'll probably still find that you still compare yourself to others. Even with that little bit of knowledge, you still think, oh, I'm still comparing myself with others. And, you know, it's still hard. And I wanted to touch upon next, and it says here on one of my notes, actually, talk about how massively this affects people. Comparison affects us all massively. Now myself, I went through long periods of comparison with, and I've pretty much compared myself to all the big reseller YouTubers that you know on this platform, UK and US, mainly UK, but even some US ones. I've compared myself to them unfavourably. I have been in a position where I've felt I can't do this, I can't do that, I can't do the other, And I've been very frustrated. And I've had times where it's been brilliant and I've not compared myself to people and I've been around people and I've seen their sales figures and it's been highly motivating and it's been brilliant. But it does affect us all from time to time or over long periods of time. It really does affect us all. And it's one of those things that we have to be consciously aware of. Because sometimes we're not consciously aware of it, are we? Sometimes we can be comparing with others and we don't quite know. We don't quite understand that our negativity or our sadness, or even to go so far as to say our depression, comes from that idea of comparison. Sometimes we might be attributing our sadness or depression or whatever it may be to other factors that aren't in the realm of comparison, but actually it is the comparison that is giving us those unfavorable emotions and feelings. So be consciously aware if you can. Try and be, when you're on Facebook or Instagram, you're seeing these big resellers post about their numbers, post about what they're doing. Be consciously aware of that little, I suppose it's this little voice in your head, you could also call it, or this little thing, these little thoughts, these little triggers. Be aware of those when you're scrolling through social media and looking at these sales figures of other people. And that in itself, it's only a small thing, but that in itself will help reduce it slightly. It's not going to do anything major, it's not going to help it massively, but being consciously aware of this comparison is the first step to being able to overcome it in any sort of way. And I feel I'm somewhat experienced enough to say somewhat a few different things you can do to overcome it, because I've been through it for a long time and I have at this point fairly well overcome it. I obviously I still compare, I'm still human, I'm going to compare every now and then to people, but it's certainly not to the level I was doing, and I feel I've got to a fairly decent point with it. So, you know, we are going to compare, but if we have that conscious attention, that conscious awareness, it's going to help us a little bit. It's just like when we say the first step to getting over alcoholism or anything like that, or drug misuse or anything, is admitting you have a problem with it or being consciously aware of your problem. It's just the same as that, really. So next I wanted to touch on expressing the idea of being a unique individual, or having individuality. Now, most people who know me know I am very individual. I don't play up to people in the sense of being something I'm not, in regards to if someone wants me to be someone I'm not. I'm just going to literally be how I am. I'm going to wear the clothes I want to wear. I'm going to do the things I'm going to do. And that's that. There was a point in time, not terribly long ago, that would aggravate me. That would, inside my mind, I would think to myself, I don't know, there's something here that I feel bad for doing that, or I feel somewhat disassociated with myself for doing that. Almost as if I wasn't happy, or I felt a sense of shame or guilt for the eccentric personality that I am. But these days I don't generally feel that, and I can express myself in the way I am, in my eccentricities and stuff, in a more well-rounded view, you know, in a more well-rounded way, I should say. And this comes from various different things, but just like I'm a unique individual and I can express myself in that way, and as I say, sometimes certain thoughts come up that are unfavourable, and just as anyone else, I have to deal with those. It's important to understand that you are a unique individual. So how are you a unique individual? How are you unique? And why does this matter in terms of comparison? You are unique because of, for one, your unique experiences on this planet. You're always going to have slightly subtle different life experiences to anyone on the planet. There's not going to be one person on the planet who has had a minute by minute exact same life as someone else. The odds of that, the chances of that are ridiculously small. So you're unique in your experiences. You could also argue from, I don't know, maybe a neuroscientific point of view, this might fall under, that you are unique in your brain, in the way your brain works. I mean, even this is a psychological viewpoint as well, maybe, but in the way your brain works, your thoughts, personality, emotions, things like that. And you're unique in that way, in what you experience with those sort of things, and the way in which you experience the world from using those as a vessel or a viewpoint. So you are a unique individual. Let's say that we've established that. So why do you need to compare? again, let's go back to that question. Why do you need to compare? So success and failure we've established are essentially abstractions that don't really matter and don't really have a solid definable definition. So again, getting back to this idea of if that's true, and if you are a unique individual as well, why do you need to compare? And we come to the answer of, I don't need to compare again. So we're building up this picture now of all these different things working with us to say, actually, hang on a minute, I don't need to compare. I don't need to do this. So I want you just to think for a second now, if you are struggling with comparison. Just let that sit in your mind for a minute and just think, yeah, I don't need to compare. Maybe even say it out loud if you'd like to. But I don't need to compare. I don't need to compare. There's no need to compare with other people. I am a unique individual. I'm going to do what I do. So long as I'm doing things that don't necessarily massively harm other people or anything like that, so long as I'm living life in the realm of my own philosophy or how I want to live it, and as I say, that's not harming anyone in the process, then I'm going to live that way as myself, as a unique individual, and I'm going to do that within my reselling, and I'm going to look at the areas of my reselling as me and how I want to move forward with my reselling, how I want to do things, what amount of listings I want to do, where I want to sell. Do I want to sell on Amazon or eBay? Not taking into consideration massively what other people are doing, but taking into consideration what you want to do as an individual personality, as an individual person on this planet. So next, I wanted just to touch upon the fact that if others are making you feel inferior on social media, let's say, they're sharing their sales posts, they're sharing how much they've listed, they're sharing all these amazing things that they're doing. I don't even know, I've not got another example to hand, but all these amazing things that they're doing in their business. If they are making you feel inferior, the chances are they have something you feel you lack. So, I would suggest, and this is just a suggestion, I'm not preaching to anyone to do this or anything like that, it's just something I've done over the past 12 to 14 months, in a bigger way than I'm suggesting you to do it, but I would suggest to look into introspection. Find out what this is you feel you lack, and then deal with it accordingly. So introspection, if you don't know, is simply just looking into your own mind, looking at your own thoughts, emotions, things like that, and seeing what it is you want from a certain situation, what it is that's going to essentially enable you to feel happier inside yourself, all this sort of stuff. And of course it comes into psychology, psychoanalysis, going to therapy or counselling and stuff like that. And I'm not saying you need to go to therapy or counselling. You may do if you feel that's something that you need to do. But certainly just doing some low-level introspection, looking, let's say, for example, someone's pulled up on Instagram, they've put up a post, I'm doing $5,000 a month on eBay. It's going really well for me. I wanted to share this because I'm very excited about it. You know, I sell X products, all the rest of it, to get to that having got to that $5,000 there, the products that I sell. So we've elaborated a little bit, and you look at that and you think, oh, they're doing so amazing, they're doing really, really well. I probably could never do that. They're working so much. I mean, I can see they're posting all the time about how much they're working and they're doing really well and everything's going well for them. I'm maybe doing $3,000 or 3,500 on eBay in 30 days. I'll never get to $5,000. I'll never do that. I just can't do it. Well, clearly, right there from that example, if we remove the illusion of all these thoughts that are running around your mind saying, I can never do this, this person works X number of hours, this person's brilliant. Let's remove all that. And let's say what the real thing is here for you as an individual. You want to get to 5k. That's the realistic. That's the baseline. You want to get to 5k in 30 days. Doesn't matter what that other person's done or said. That's what you want, going off that little, very simple example there. So what you do when you're confronted with this comparison, this is a good way to deal with it actually, is you try to get down past the illusions of all these thoughts that are running around and making you feel inferior. You get down past that to the nitty gritty of what that person's achieved that you want to achieve. And then what you do is you plan in isolation, you plan some goals around it, and you get there. You don't have to tell anyone about your ambitions or anything like that or your goals. I would advise against it actually, because I've done that quite a few times and never really worked that well for me. I've always done better when I don't advertise my goals. But then you plan your goals and then you work towards them, not worrying what the other people have said, or what the other people have done, or what their work ethic is, or anything like that. Now, it's important also to say, well, I might take on board a few of the things that they've done, but don't sacrifice yourself just because someone else is doing something else that you think you ought to do. Do it because you want to do it. So if they're working 10 hours a day, yeah, it might be a good idea for you to work 10 hours a day. But really make sure that you know that that's for you. Don't just go blindly into it and think, yeah, I'm going to work 10 hours a day because that's what they're doing to get those results. Think about it. Maybe it's better actually for you to work 5 hours a day, but do double the value of items that they do in terms of their selling price, double their selling price or whatever. And that actually would be a really good route, because you're obviously decreasing your time for the amount of money. So look at it in different ways and look at it inside your own mind, and don't think that you have to do everything the way other people do as well. So that's that point there. So I wanted to touch upon this as well. Realize that the people you are competing with are not competitors, but real human individuals who have all the insecurities and flaws you have, just in different variances. So this is an interesting one. Of course, all these people we're comparing with on Facebook, Instagram, maybe we look at eBay stores and we're comparing on eBay, or maybe we look at other Amazon sellers and we're comparing with other Amazon sellers. It's very, very easy to think of those people who are doing $5,000 more than you a month, or $2,000 more than you a month, or $10,000 more than you a month, or hell, even $50,000 more than you a month. It's very, very easy to start thinking of those people as gods. And I don't say that with any lightness, really. I'm quite serious or sincere when I say that. In the fact that, if someone's doing 10k more than you a month, you can idolize them. You can think that they're divine. You can think that they're above everyone. You can think, oh, they're way above me. They're doing brilliant. I'd never do that. So they are your competitors, in the sense of that we are in the same realm of business, but they are also real human beings. And that's where the competition stops. That's where they stop being your competition. They are real human individuals, just like yourself, and as I said, who have all the insecurities and flaws that you have. And I would encourage, and actually this is getting on to a point, or is it? No, it isn't actually. So I'll talk about this now, and then I may go back over this slightly later on. So I apologise if later on I do recover a little bit of this ground, but I think it's important anyway. But I would encourage to talk to those people on social media, in real life, whatever. Those people that you idolise as gods, if you can. I mean, of course, if you're idolising Gary Vee as a god, there's probably not much chance you're going to get to talk to him, or if you do get to talk to him, it might be 1 or 2 words, something like that. So in that case, you might just have to let go of that idolising of that person. Oh, don't know whether you heard that, but it looks like I've got a sale on eBay, so that's nice. But let's say one of the people you idolise is someone that you can get in touch with, and that you can have a decent conversation with, and that you can actually understand who they are as a human. I would suggest in the pursuit of beating or over, I don't really like to use the word beating, it's not a very nice word. I like to use overcoming is a better word. So overcoming, in the pursuit of overcoming this comparison, you talk to them, but you don't talk to them about work. You talk to them as a real human being. You make friends with that person. And automatically after a few weeks of friendship, of maybe a few months, whatever, they start opening up to you and they say, well, I've got this at the moment and unfortunately my dog's passed away, or unfortunately, I've got to go in for this operation, or I've got to do this, and and I'm struggling with my day-to-day life here or there, or I've been doing this, or whatever it may be. But you'll find that their humanity comes to the forefront, and suddenly everything opens up for you, and that gives you a vast realization. Oh my God, this person is human. And you may have already knew that, because obviously you did. You know that they're human. But you've idolized them to such an extent that you almost forgot their humanity in the process. And then you start being friends with them, and they open up quite happily to you. If they are a holistic personality or a well-rounded individual, they will open up to you. People who are living in an egotistical fairyland, they won't open up to you, and that's their prerogative, if they want to live like that. But people who are kind, people who are centered, people who are very much human will open up to you about their problems, and we all have problems, trust me. And if you get to know them, they will do that, and then you can open up to them in return if you like. But what I'm trying to get at here is that you will reduce some of that comparison and that negativity, because you'll see them, not only are they your friend now, and you can see them in that way, but you see them as just a beautiful human being who is completely whole, who has all these beautifully good points, but all these bad points as well that are still very beautiful, because you cannot have a human without having some negative in there as well. And if everyone was all positive, or there was only one certain trait in people, we'd end up being all robots. So we'd end up being all the same. It would be not a very nice world. I wouldn't like to live in a world like that. So you can really see their humanity. You can really see their beauty. So I would say definitely realize that they're human beings and that you don't have to idolize them. They are equal to you. Obviously, I'm pretty sure there was a saying in the Bible or somewhere anyway that all men were created equal. So just be aware of that. And as I say, if you can get in touch on Instagram or Facebook or whatever, do try and do that, and it will alleviate that a little bit. So next one I wanted to cover is find your own path. Have faith in it and stick to it. So I touched on this earlier on, so I won't go too deep into this. But let's say you're new to reselling, you've got 20 listings on eBay, and you want to get 100 listings on eBay. And quite firmly, you're quite happy with the fact that you want to do media, right? You want to do video games. So don't worry looking around at other people. Don't worry about thinking, oh, should I be doing this, or should I be doing the other, or should I maybe do clothing instead, or should I do this, whatever it may be. Don't think about all that. Just do the media. Go with your first gut instinct. Go out to the car boots, charity shops, whatever it may be. Make your own choice in your sourcing style. And get those items, get that stock, and list it on eBay. And simply focus on your own path. Have faith in yourself and get to your goal. The key in that sentence there, or that statement, is having faith in yourself. Of course, we all, and this could be a topic all on its own actually, and I probably will make it one at some point in the future on this podcast. But simply having faith in yourself, that's a big one, and sometimes we all seem to lack that a little bit in certain areas, in certain times in our life, especially when we've had a blow. Maybe we've come out of a relationship, maybe someone's passed away in our life, something like that. It can really knock us off, and it can impact our business life. Obviously our personal life can impact our business life, and our business life can impact our personal life, as we're going to discuss next week. I don't know whether I actually mentioned at the start of the video, maybe I did, but the topic is going to be for next week, balancing business and social life. I think I maybe did mention that, but yeah, so just find your own path, have faith in yourself, and move forward, sticking to your goal. So next one, find a base inside yourself and enjoy the safety of that base. So if we've got, let's give a general example of this. We've got a model aircraft, right? And it's one of those small ones that needs a little base, right? Imagine if you don't put that base on that aircraft and you just put it on the shelf, right? It's going to be a bit wonky, isn't it? It might even be prone to moving around a little bit, and some of the pieces might come off it or whatever. But then when you've slid that base underneath it and you've attached it all up, and it's looking good, and you put that little sticker on it that says exactly what it is and it articulates it in the most beautiful way possible, you then realise that, wow, that's a really nice model aircraft there. Now it's got its base on. When it didn't have its base on, it looked a bit slanted, it looked a bit crooked, didn't look the best, right? So it's just the same for humans. We need a base. We need a base that is intrinsic to ourselves, preferably, as I say, intrinsic, internal, not an external base. A base inside ourselves from which we can enjoy the safety of it, and whatever's going on around us, whatever's going on outside us, we can always have that base inside of us, essentially. So, I, of course, as many people will know, have cultivated this base with spirituality and possibly even philosophy and religion too. So I've put here, whether this be attained through the means of psychoanalysis, spirituality, religion, etc., it will help you to be comfortable in your own skin. So all I'm saying now is it might be of interest to you in the pursuit again of beating this comparison to look into something such as the things I discussed there, maybe even other areas as well, of which you can form a good base inside yourself that can help you with your daily life and keep you happy, keep you content. A lot of people would say meditation works really well for me. Other people might, for some people it might just be something very, very simple, like exercise, or as I say, even meditation, just something like that you can have a base, that you can cultivate some sort of contentment and some sort of base inside yourself around that. Now, of course, exercise might be a little bit external, but it's something that you can do in most situations, so it's never really going to be something that completely leaves your side or anything like that. So in that respect, it is somewhat internal as well. You could also go down the path of psychoanalysis or having therapy or counselling or something like that, or being very introspective with yourself and being able to form a more cultivate a stronger sense of self and a more holistic personality within your own mind that allows you to be free of this feeling of inferiority to people, or even the feeling of wanting to be superior or have power over other people. So essentially might be something to look into. Of course, I'm not necessarily saying anyone needs to have therapy or counselling or whatever, but it can be a good base. It can be a good base. So find that base and grow from there, essentially, and move forward from there. So next one, and this relates to one of the points that we mentioned earlier on, collaborate with the person you are comparing yourself to. This may sound destructive, but just for someone who is anxious, it is best for them to face their fears so it is good for you to face the person you are comparing to, as this will show you their humanity is no different from yours. So that last bit, obviously, we touched upon earlier on, but me being someone who has anxiety or has panic disorder, when I'm confronted with something I'm anxious about, all the times that I have felt the best have been the times where I have actually gone and done that event and that I've overcome it. All the times I've felt the worst is when I haven't gone to the event or haven't overcome it. So just like that, for me, comparing yourself to others, it might be worth just, as I say, going to that other person, talking to them, and feeling their humanity and feeling really their flaws and all the rest of it, as I touched upon before. So yeah, I think that's quite important, and it may sound somewhat paradoxical in a way, because you're doing the thing that you think you shouldn't do, because you're actually you're literally heading straight on for the comparison. But I think it's very, very important to do that and to actually face up to that fear a little bit, and essentially just, I suppose, cultivate a better sense of achievement with regards to overcoming that comparison, by doing that, by actually opening up in that way and not letting that fear affect you too much, not backing off from it too much, because it's when you back off, just as I mentioned with my anxiety, when I back off becomes worse. So yeah, I think that sometimes actually these paradoxical statements can have a lot of truth and a lot of wisdom inside them, really. So yeah, it may be worth just talking to people, not in all situations, but certainly in some situations. So now what we're going to get on to is reading the... Oh no, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself there a little bit. I just wanted to very briefly touch on social media and Facebook versus Instagram with regards to the reseller community. Now, please note, this is going to be a little bit of my own opinion, so it's not necessarily factual information or anything. It's just simply, well, to be honest, most of this has been my opinion anyway, but Facebook versus Instagram, I am not a fan of Facebook. For me, having looked into this from a personal viewpoint, I suppose, I really do feel it's because of the size of the groups. So we have on Facebook, we've had the UK reseller group, which I don't know what that's at the moment, but when I was in there, it was probably 2,000, 3,000. I think I'd started when it was 1,300 members, but then it got all the way up to 3,000 or something crazy. Probably more than that now, I'm not sure. But you have loads of members in there, and you have loads of people commenting and getting involved, and maybe even having a few digs at each other. Because what you've got to understand is that Facebook and Instagram are the water cooler, or are the place in reselling in which the colleagues gather around to have a bit of a laugh. And what happens at the workplace? I mean, I've only ever had one proper job, but what happened is, the men in particular like to have little digs at each other and stuff like that, and I don't know whether the women do that. I don't think they do particularly. I think they're more intelligent than that and they're above that, but we have little digs at each other and stuff. So when you're in these groups, people are gonna have these little digs at each other, and also people are gonna be boasting their own achievements and trying to big themselves up as someone brilliant, and of course those people are just frantically over exaggerating their own egos, or suffering even from maybe a slight bit of ego inflation in severe circumstances, I suppose. But yeah, so people tend to do that, and it's fine to not preach, but to get out there your own achievements. That's perfectly fine. If you've got the platform to do it, then do it. You deserve to say to a few people, yeah, look, I've achieved this. That's perfectly fine. But some people get a bit over the top with it. I've seen it in the Facebook groups. They're posting in there every day their sales, their number of listings they've done, and they're just getting a little bit inflationary with it, let's say. And then people are coming on, and people are having digs, and people are somewhat just banter and stuff, but sometimes it can get overbearing. And from a bystander or from someone who just comments infrequently, and someone who's maybe a little bit more introverted, and I'm not talking about myself here, I'm just talking about a fictitious person that I'm building up, this could seem quite overwhelming, and it could be, you're prone to more comparison there. So, and I feel it is mainly with these larger groups. When we look at Instagram, there's not really any groups on Instagram. Of course, you can create messaging groups and stuff if you'd like to. But there's not really any groups. There's hashtags and all the rest of it. And you can follow who you want to follow and you don't have to follow anyone else or whatever. And it's a smaller environment. And generally, there's this unspoken rule in the Instagram reselling community. Or there was a few months ago. It's kind of dissipated a little bit more now, but people still kind of follow it a little bit. And that's kind of that if you're going to post your figures, don't do so all the time. Just post every now and then when you're posting your figures. And I like that unspoken rule because there are people on Instagram who post their figures regularly, once a week, something like that. But the way in which we go about it is very, very helpful, very, very positive, and just generally quite encouraging to people. I know quite a few people who I follow. I don't follow that many people on Instagram. I like to. It's a vanity thing, but I like to keep my followers below 50, and then hopefully one day I'll have about 5,000 followers, but I'll only be following 50. It's just a vanity thing, really. But so I follow 40 odd people or whatever at the moment. And I like the people I follow, and I'm quite happy for those to share their figures if they'd like to, because they always do it in quite a nice manner, and they're well demeanoured about it. And, I enjoy Instagram, and it's because, I really do feel it is because of that smaller, more refined environment in which I've set up for myself in the amount of people I follow over there. When you're in a group of 3,000 people, there's not much room for you being able to filter out people. I'm sure there are ways to do it. Maybe you can hide certain people's posts or something like that on Facebook. But you can't filter out massively. There's always going to be people in there. So going over on Instagram, I've come away from Facebook over the last few months. I did a segment in a vlog quite a while back about how it was bringing me quite a lot of negativity. Since I've done that, and moved away from Facebook a bit more, I have been much more positive over on Instagram. Now, don't get me wrong, you can still end up comparing yourself over on Instagram, and you can still, have these periods of time where you are in that realm of definitely comparing yourself to others. But it seems a little bit, in my opinion, it seems a little bit more easier to overcome on Instagram. What I've also done for extended periods of time over the last few months, I think the longest I did this for was maybe 6 days, 5, 6, 7 days, was delete Instagram off my phone and not add any social media other than YouTube, because I love YouTube. You know what I'm like on YouTube. But other than YouTube for 5 or 6 days. And I would encourage people to do that for the somewhat the overcoming of comparison again. Now, you've got to be careful, because cutting Instagram out of your life, I mean, if you're cutting things out of your life because you're comparing to people, then that's not necessarily a good thing to do, because you're just running away from the situation. So I recognised that within myself as well, that's what I was doing for a while. So then I actually forced myself to actually be around Instagram and be around that comparison, but actually cultivate a level of conscious awareness to the comparison and little tricks and stuff for being able to deal with it a bit more, some of which I've actually discussed here. So then I can live my life wherever I am, whatever I'm doing, whatever social media I'm on, and I can be happy doing that. And even though the comparison is seemingly there, I don't feel I need to compare to other people. I don't feel I need to rise to it too much. So you have got to be aware, it is a good point actually, that you might be running from comparison. And if that's what you're doing, maybe you need to reassess, and maybe you need to actually just jump back into it a little bit and actually find a way to deal with it in the middle of it, because that's how you're going to really overcome it. Now, of course, some people may argue, and this is a valid point, that maybe I'm still running away from Facebook. But to be honest, I'm quite happy to go on Facebook. I go on Facebook every week when I'm on the Seller Lads Live, and I have to go on Facebook to do a bit of messaging on that chat, and obviously get the link for the Google Hangouts. I go on that, and I'm quite happy to go on Facebook. It's just I'm not that fussed anymore with it, really. But essentially, you've got to be careful that you're not just blatantly running away from comparison, because that might make it worse. And as I touched upon earlier, what might actually make it better is confronting it head on by facing the people you're comparing yourself with unfavorably. And maybe, and this is just a suggestion, so take this with a pinch of salt, maybe it might be worth actually telling people, I'm comparing myself unfavorably with you. I don't know how well that would go down. I'm sure most people would be amicable with that situation and would say, oh, you don't need to compare yourself to me, and they'd be very friendly with you about it. But I don't know. But it's just a suggestion. That might be something that might be good. It might be something that probably is best avoiding. I'm not too sure, but it might be something to at least have a think about. So that comes to the end of my points, but don't go anywhere just yet, because I have a couple of comments from over on my YouTube community tab. I posted over there yesterday just to see if there was any comments or questions about this topic. So I've got, first off, and my voice is really starting to go now, but first off, I've got the Pinbox. Now, I do know you've got a YouTube channel, and unfortunately I don't know your name, so I apologise. I have watched one or two of your videos, but I can't remember what it was you said your name was. I think you did say it in one of your videos, so I apologise. I know you're quite a regular of the channel, and I very much appreciate your comment here. If you want to drop a comment down below to say what your name is, I'd really appreciate that, because I don't like forgetting people's names or anything like that. Anyway, so the Pinbox says, "Hi ads, I really enjoyed your first podcast and how sleep has a huge impact on health and how productive you are. It really is the key thing for longevity and well-being. So chuffed you talked about it. Thank you very much for the kind words, first off. As I mentioned in that podcast, I won't go over all ground, but yeah, I really do feel that sleep is quite a big factor. And as I said in the podcast, it's something that I've chopped and changed with my routine, and I feel like I've found a decent level at this point. I think one of the things I think about is how you measure success. I always thought I wasn't adulting very good, flipping from a science background to creative projects and not finding the perfect fit. But I think every little or big thing we learn and master is a step to the next adventure, transferring skills you sort of level up until you're doing the thing that you love, and it all fits together, and you smile every day. I think that's success." Well, it's a very, very good comment, that, and I remember reading that yesterday when they actually commented it, and I just agreed with it massively. I really do think a lot of the things that I've done in my life, for example, have kind of led me to the moment of even just recording this podcast here and being able to work a microphone and do OBS and edit this video over on Premiere Pro when I come to edit it. Things like obviously doing my social media marketing back when I was a lot younger. Some of those skills I've been able to call upon in my later YouTube career or later eBay reselling career. It all does link in together, and I think it's important to note that whatever you're doing, you're going to gain some sort of valuable skill, so long as you actually want to attain the skill and do some work towards it. But you're going to attain some sort of valuable skill that you can then transfer onto another job, onto even reselling. Let's say that you're doing a job now, or you've done a job a few months ago, and now you're able to transfer some of those skills from that job onto being let's say a full-time reseller. So yeah, I think it always works out in that way. I didn't adult very well in terms of obviously I quit my uni course. I didn't know, I didn't have any direction of where I was going. I was depressed, I was anxious, I was all the things under the sun. I didn't have any direction, didn't know what I wanted to do. And I understand now that I don't want to do anything but the thing I'm already doing, in the sense of whatever that thing may be. And I know that at different times in my life, that thing that I want to do will be different. So right now it's reselling, and most probably I'll continue reselling as a theme throughout my entire adult life, really, in some form or another. But there will always be things that go along with that, whether it be philosophy, whether it be psychology, whether it be something else, I don't know. But it's always going to be a little bit different for me, and I'm not going to try and define the one thing that is going to be the perfect job for me, because I don't think that exists. I think it's just this string of different things that I will do because I enjoy doing them, and that's really all that matters, so long as, of course, I'm able to make enough to pay the bills ultimately as well. So, really nice comment that was. And next one, or the final one here, is from Mark. Mark's been a regular of the channel for a little while now. I've seen his icon, his little profile picture, come up in a few of my Thursday Talks episodes, and I know he's been around the community for a little bit. So, he says, my biggest downfall with comparing myself with other resellers is having some of the bigger resellers saved in my eBay and constantly checking how they are getting on. It does also give me some motivation to aim a bit higher and gives ideas of other things to pick up. Do you have any other sellers saved in eBay which you check up on? I don't have any other saved sellers. I don't check up on people on eBay, other resellers, and how they're doing. I don't check on their sales. I know a lot of people do this. Of course, I mentioned in many videos before this one that I do sometimes look at other YouTubers in the reselling space and essentially assess kind of how they're doing and what milestones they're approaching. These days, not so much because I'm comparing to them. Obviously, I won't lie, it definitely was a few months ago. I was comparing myself to them while I was looking at how their channels were doing. But these days, it's not so much for that. It's just simply because I enjoy seeing how my friends are getting on and seeing what milestones they're hitting with regards to views and subscribers and stuff. And it gives me a lot of pleasure to see. And as I just call them, they're my friends. I do consider a lot of the UK YouTubers, UK resellers, to be my friends. And it's just nice to see how they're getting on, essentially, and what these milestones they are hitting. And it brings me a lot of joy to see that, essentially, and to see that they're progressing in the way that they'd like to. So, yeah, I don't really have any other saved sellers on eBay that I look at. I would say that if you are comparing yourself, then there's two things you could do, really. You could simply stop checking the saved eBay sellers so often, so just check it every now and then maybe that'll reduce the comparison a little bit, but also you'll still be able to get a bit of motivation from it because you're still actually doing the activity and you're getting a little bit of motivation from what other people are doing. You never know, that might not work and the comparison may still be there even though you are checking less frequently. But the only other option or the alternative is just to simply walk away and stop checking that and don't check the saved searches or anything like that, the saved eBay sellers. It's the only thing I can really think of. Well, they're the only two things I can really think of on that question there. It is hard. We're always going to come across this comparison wherever we are at. If I can speak there, wherever we're at, then we're always going to come across some level of comparison, and essentially we just have to do what we can to keep ourselves strong inside ourselves, essentially, and that's how it's going to have to be. So yeah, I think that just about wraps it up. We're coming up to 54 minutes now. I don't really think there's anything else I wanted to touch upon. That was a very good podcast, that, even if I do say so myself. I do hope you enjoyed it. as I mentioned throughout this podcast, the next topic is going to be balancing business and social life. So if you have any questions, queries, comments, anything like that, you just like to obviously maybe let me read out your comments on the podcast, you'd like to get a comment out there, then please do drop them down below this video. Also, you can go over to my Instagram and you can message me personally over there, and not only can you obviously get your question read out on the podcast, but we can also have a little bit more of an in-depth personal chat about whatever it is you've got to talk about in relation to that topic. So yeah, please feel free to do that. If you haven't already, then please follow me over on my Instagram. Don't forget, if you like this sort of content, if you like the content you see on my channel, please do subscribe, and of course hit that like button to show your support for the podcast. And I will wrap it up for this one. So that is episode 2 done, and I will see you next week for episode 3.